One way or another, every war develops according to a similar pattern. It all starts with insignificant provocations, and right before the start of large-scale hostilities, it seems that bloodshed can be avoided. But wars are never launched by chance. The reality is that there is always an aggressor that is preparing to attack the enemy state in advance. In the case of the Russian-Ukrainian war, everything happened according to a standard pattern. And proposing ultimatums to the Ukrainian side, the Kremlin did not even try to wait for them to be accomplished. The invasion plan was elaborated in detail. Ukraine had no chances to deal with such a direct armed confrontation. But the Kremlin outsmarted itself, because Russia was not ready for a hybrid defense.
А вот и российский солдат.
This is the series about the ATO, History of War, episode number 70. In 2014, the Russian Federation committed an act of armed aggression against Ukraine. The war has been ongoing for several years. Hot on the heels, we're following the course of events in this war, and we're tracing the links between military operations, diplomacy, politics, and economics. We're trying to understand how it was and, most importantly, why. On October 11, 2015, the armed forces of Ukraine finished the withdrawal of artillery with a caliber of less than 100 mm from the demarcation line. A similar state of affairs was in the camps of the militants. The ceasefire was generally observed. In the area of Shirokino and Novotroitsky, the terrorists launched several provocations during the night hours using small arms. However, due to the fact that these attacks did not pose a threat to the lives of soldiers and local residents, there was no return fire. A 12-year-old child stepped on an explosive device and was injured in the area of the village of Hranitne. In the Zaporizhia Oblast, SBU officers detained a DPR militant who was listed in the so-called Slavic Battalion and was on the wanted list for a long time. In the village of Sirotine in the Luhansk Oblast, a massive storehouse of weapons and ammunition was discovered. Taking advantage of the lull, the engineering units of the 128th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine started the arrangement of the pedestrian crossing point of the demarcation line in the area of the Stanitsa Luhanska. It should be noted that later, Stanitsa Luhanska turned out to be the most tranquil segment of the demarcation line. The Seversky Donets River, which worked as a natural defensive line, played a very important role in maintaining the peace. It is important to note that while fighting in Syria and being under the pressure of economic sanctions, Russia could no longer support the puppet republics to the degree that it was capable of in February 2015. In simple words, the Kremlin did not have the financial resources for conducting repeated attempts to build pontoon bridges in the area of the towns of Stanitsa Luhanska and Shestya. Indeed, it was the meagre supply of hybrid troops that eventually led to a bona fide truce. The Russian-Ukrainian war is not only fighting in the Donbass, but also standoffs in international courts. On October 13th, the Security Council of the Netherlands published a report investigating the causes of the crash of the MH17 aircraft, which was shot down by Russian terrorists in the skies over eastern Ukraine in July 2014. The investigation established that the direct cause of the aircraft was struck by a 9N314M missile that was fired from the Buk anti-aircraft missile system. However, in spite of indirect evidence of the ownership of this complex by the 53rd Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces, the direct culprit of the tragedy was not named and the investigation continued. At the same time, near Donetsk, in the area of the Butivka coal mine, as a result of shelling of Ukrainian positions from grenade launchers, a soldier of the 93rd Brigade was killed on October 13th. And here it is important to understand that, despite the state of the truce, the work of reconnaissance groups, snipers and sappers was not curtailed. There is a logical explanation for this situation. After all, even under conditions of a ceasefire, any commander has information about the enemy and controls the so-called gray zone, thereby preventing the passage of enemy scouts. At the same time, clearing the territories adjacent to the front line from mines and exploded ordnance is an important element that will certainly ensure the security of the civilian population. The figures will help to estimate the scale of the problem. Only in the first week of October, 603 explosive items were eliminated by the demining forces of the Ukrainian army, and in one day, on October 13th, there were 18 such objects found. Commenting on the situation, the representative of Ukraine in the contact group, Leonid Kuchma, said that in the current situation it would take at least 5 years to demine the Donbass. The danger of landmines appeared again literally the next day. On October 14th, near Stanitsa Luhanska, while checking the forest belt, 2 soldiers of the 128th Brigade were wounded as a result of an explosion at a mine. Near the village of Krasnotalivka, a border guard vehicle was blown up by a mine, and 9 people were injured. All the fighters were evacuated to the local hospital, where they received all the necessary medical aid. October 15 was absolutely quiet along the whole line of demarcation. In the Mykolaiv Oblast, the SBU detained plotters who distributed anti-Ukrainian leaflets and organized provocative actions. The meddlers were detained after they installed a swastika flag on one of the local avenues. During the searches, F1 and RGD-5 grenades were found. In total, over the week, law enforcement agencies detained 12 members of the Somalia, Sparta, Vostok and other gangs. The thugs were exposed, and as a result of the evidence they provided, another 14 people became wanted on charges of creating or participating in the activities of a number of illegal armed groups. On October 15th, in the ATO zone, the militants of the LPR began to withdraw mortars from the line of demarcation, and by the middle of the day, they announced the completion of this operation. Respecting the conditions of the truce, the Ukrainian side carried out a mirror-like withdrawal of weapons. The very next day, October 16th, the observers of the OSCE mission officially recorded this fact. On October 17th, it was planned that the withdrawal of weapons would begin in the zone of responsibility of the DPR army, which is also known as the 1st Army Corps of the Russian Armed Forces. But on this day, near the Donetsk airport, 2 Ukrainian soldiers were injured by the fire of militants. It is logical that this shelling incited an adequate response of the Ukrainian army. As a result, referring to the intensified activity in the Donetsk Oblast, the so-called official representative of the Ministry of Defense of the DPR, Eduard Basurin, announced the postponement of the start of the withdrawal of weapons on October 21, 2015. At the same time, the armed forces of Ukraine clearly fulfilled their commitments to comply with the conditions of the ceasefire. In the Donetsk Oblast, the withdrawal of Ukrainian weapons with a caliber of less than 100 mm, according to the previously outlined plan, was launched on October 20th. It should be noted that the situation in the front also contributed to this process. In the period from October 18th to 20th, along the whole line of demarcation, the militants complied with the ceasefire. Despite this, war did not end, and Russia did not withdraw its troops from the occupied territories, using the Donbass as a testing ground for new technology. At the end of the second week of October 2015, for the first time since the time of the Debaltseve battle, Ukrainian soldiers began once again receiving SMS messages of a demoralizing nature. The Russian troops used the RB-34-1V Layer 3 electronic warfare station to send such threatening messages to Ukrainian soldiers. On October 21st, the militants of DPR announced the beginning of the withdrawal of weapons. Moreover, more than 30 tanks were withdrawn from the frontline zone of the Novoazovsk rayon in the Donetsk Oblast. The very next day, the terrorists announced the withdrawal withdrawal of equipment from Horlivka and Donetsk. Taking advantage of the truce, the Ukrainian forces started restoration of the destroyed infrastructure, the restoration of communication and power supply to the frontline territories, as well as demining. During the second week of October, the sappers eliminated more than 500 landmines and unexploded shells. This number included 2 caches of ammunition, which were discovered by law enforcement officers in the area of the villages of Zaitseve and Katerynivka in the Marinka rayon. In the latter case, the militants equipping the ammunition depot also mined their approaches to it. On October 22nd, the next 42nd humanitarian convoy from Russia arrived in Ukraine, which delivered 1,000 tons of various goods. Recall that the delivery of goods by road is just one of the ways to supply the army of militants, while the main supply of the invented republics of the LPR and the DPR was carried out by rail.
О, да, я же говорю, стреляют с этой зеленки нижней.
On the night of October 23rd, the militants launched several provocations by firing on Ukrainian positions in the area of the Shirokine, Opitne, and Pisky villages. Moreover, in addition to small arms, the terrorists used automatic grenade launchers and 82mm mortars, which led to the death of 1 Ukrainian soldier. In the morning, an unmanned aerial vehicle of the OSCE mission spotted and recorded 16 enemy tanks in the area of the village of Sontseve, which required bringing Ukrainian troops into combat readiness. On October 24th, terrorists twice shot at Ukrainian positions in the Shirokine area, and the concentration of Russian troops was noted near the state border. It should be noted here that, imitating the withdrawal of their units, the Kremlin simply carried out their planned rotation. Training militants, the supply of military equipment and ammunition was also not suspended. The night of October 25th turned out to be very tense in the area of Pisky, where within an hour the militants fired at Ukrainian positions with high-caliber machine guns, automatic grenade launchers, and an anti-aircraft gun. Such activity is associated with the rotation of personnel. Conducting the so-called reconnaissance fire, the newly arrived militants tried to provoke a response and expose the location of the Ukrainian firing points. On the evening of October 26th, a sabotage reconnaissance group of militants at dusk managed to get close to the Ukrainian positions in the area of the village of Vodyane in the Yasynovata rayon. The guards spotted the enemy and managed to set off the alarm, which allowed them to drive the enemy back. However, a senior soldier, Ihor Kryapa, was killed by an exploding bullet. On October 27th, in the Luhansk Oblast, a citizen of Russia and an LPR militant was detained, and a pedestrian crossing point was opened near Stanitsa Luhanska. On the same day, near the village of Zaitseve, near Horlivka, there was shooting, as a result of which 1 Ukrainian soldier was wounded. The next day, near the village of Verkhnotoretske, a soldier of the 53rd Brigade was blown up on a mine. And near the Butivka mine, as a result of close battles, 3 soldiers received injuries of varying degrees of severity. However, in all other parts of the line of demarcation, the ceasefire was observed, meaning that artillery guns, tanks and mortars were not used. Planning the invasion of Ukraine, Kremlin strategists understood that an open invasion would incite a negative reaction all over the world. That is why Russia relied on the hybrid tactics of the Russian Spring, which meant provocations and deception. And to any blow of the Ukrainian army, the Kremlin has always responded many times with a stronger blow of its army, which, having only crossed the border, instantly turned into a faceless army of Novorossiya. Understanding this technology and clearly assessing the difference in military capabilities, Ukraine did not even try to fight with the help of brute force alone. By making the war in the Donbass as transparent as possible, calling on foreign observers and international arbitrators, developing defense but offering negotiations and peace, Ukraine sought to turn the competition of military budgets into a duel of diplomacy. So, this was a very clever move.